Rain trickled against my window pane in Seattle. Usually the gray skies comfort me, but that morning something felt wrong. An uneasiness I couldn't place. Until I checked my mail. It was the third letter that week. Plain envelope, no return address. Just my name, Emily, written in neat black ink, and signed, "Your secret friend." I tried to tell myself it was a prank, but this letter was different. It wasn't just creepy, it was impossible. The note inside read, "That blue sweater suits you perfectly. It's a shame you left your balcony door unlocked last night. Anyone could have slipped inside." A cold shiver crawled down my spine. I looked at my sliding door. I lived high up. I thought I was safe, but my gut told me I was being watched. I work as an investigative journalist. At the time, I was obsessed with the unsolved murder of a woman named Alyssa Monroe. Her body had been found near an abandoned post office at Lake Aurora. No suspects, no leads, just silence. I was deep in the files when my phone buzzed. It was Frank Morrison. Frank was a retired postal worker, a good man who knew everything about the system. "Emily," he said, his voice serious, "did you see my email?" "I'm looking at it now," I replied. "What's this about the stamps?" Frank hesitated. I could hear the fear in his breath. "I recognize something about the photos you sent me of those letters. Emily, those stamps? They haven't been printed since 1987. Whoever is sending you these isn't just buying stamps at the store. They are deliberately using obsolete postal routes to stay off the grid." My stomach dropped. Why would someone do that? "Because they're showing off," Frank said gravely. "They want you to know how close they can get." Before I could answer, a soft thud echoed from my hallway. I froze. My eyes locked on the thin sliver of space beneath my front door. Seconds felt like hours. Slowly, I walked to the entrance. My hands were shaking as I unlocked it. The hallway was empty, except for a small package wrapped in plain brown paper. I brought it inside. My pulse hammered in my ears as I tore it open. Photographs spilled onto my table. They were photos of me. At a cafe, outside my building, at the bookstore. Someone had been documenting my every move. At the bottom of the box I found a note. "Stop digging into the Lake Aurora murder, or you'll become part of the story." Fear surged through me, but so did anger. This wasn't a prank. My stalker knew about my investigation. I called Frank back immediately. "Frank, they sent photos, they know everything." "Listen to me," Frank said, his voice tense. "Years ago, a postal worker named Robert Hayes disappeared. He handled the mail routes near Lake Aurora. I always suspected him. If he's still alive, he is incredibly dangerous. And he never works alone." That night I couldn't sleep. I spent hours digging into Robert Hayes online. He vanished 20 years ago amid rumors of stalking. The next morning, at a cafe, I got a notification, an anonymous email. "Your friend Frank talks too much. Maybe it's time to silence him. How about another swim at the lake?" My blood ran cold. I called Frank. No answer. I raced to his house. His front door was ajar. "Frank?" Silence. I walked inside. Muddy footprints led to his study. The room was destroyed. Drawers overturned, his laptop shattered, and on the floor, a single crumpled stamp. Discontinued. 1987. My phone rang. Unknown number. "Who is this?" I demanded. A distorted voice answered calmly. "Enjoying my game, Emily." "Where is Frank?" I screamed. "Nothing compared to what I'll do to you," the voice hissed. "Meet me tonight at the old Aurora post office, alone. If you call the cops, Frank won't see the sunrise." I went to the police, but without a body, they couldn't move fast enough. I had no choice. That night, I broke into the derelict postal facility. The air smelled of mold and rust. I followed a flicker of candlelight to a back room. What I saw stopped my heart. The walls were covered in photos, hundreds of women, unaware they were being watched, and in the center, my face. "You're even braver than I expected," a voice said from the shadows. I spun around. A gaunt, pale man stepped into the light, Robert Hayes. "Why?" I asked, my hand trembling in my pocket, clutching my phone. "Because I have to protect my secrets," he said, his eyes gleaming with madness. "Alyssa Monroe found out. She had to go. Now you're forcing my hand." He pulled something from his pocket, Frank's glasses, cracked and bloodied. "End your investigation," he smiled coldly. "And maybe Frank lives." I gripped my phone. I was recording everything. "No," I said. "This ends tonight." Hayes's smile vanished. "Wrong choice." He lunged at me. I bolted into the darkness. I could hear his heavy footsteps behind me, echoing like a predator. I hid in a storage closet, holding my breath. "You can't hide, Emily," he yelled. "I know every corner of this place." I texted the detective the location. Then, silence. Minutes later, sirens. Relief washed over me. I stepped out of the closet, but Hayes was standing right there, blocking the exit. "You ruined everything," he hissed. "You killed them," I shouted back. "You think you're protecting them?" "They forced my hand," he whispered harshly. "Just like you." Suddenly, police burst through the doors. Flashlights cut the dark. Hayes raised his hands, defeat on his face. As they cuffed him, he looked at me one last time. "It won't end here," he whispered. "I'm just one small part." They found Frank at the lake, injured but alive. "You saved us," Frank told me later at the hospital. "But be careful. There were always whispers about something bigger." I tried to move on. I went back to work. But weeks later, I stopped at my mailbox. My hand started shaking. Inside was a plain envelope, unmarked, sealed with a stamp from 1987. I tore it open. A single line. "Your secret friend sends his regards." I looked around the busy street. Strangers everywhere. Robert Hayes was in prison, but his words echoed in my head. "I'm just one small part." And deep in my chest, I knew the truth. My fight had only just begun.